You are now listening to Musings Behind the Creative. What's your passion? Hi, and welcome to another episode of Season 2 of Musings Behind the Creative. I am your host, Renata Dixon-Nwosu, and this is quite special because I think by the time I started Season 1, I wasn't chartered yet, and it was all about my experiences and what I could offer to undergraduate students. And I think from 2020 to now, I finally graduated, and I'm now a Part 3 champion at Westminster University. And so I thought it was quite poignant to team up with our Part 3 group, which we have an acronym for. And one of my colleagues, who is also chartered, is here to tell her story about becoming an architect. And like I said, our podcasts are very much a this is your story, this is your life type of episode. And you share your tips and tricks. And I always say to everybody, take what you need and leave what you don't need at the door. It's not necessarily about politics or agreement or disagreements. And since we are in an architecture school, we are all open to critical thinking and interrogating things with, what's the word?
Don't know.
with a semblance of rigour. Okay, so with that said, I would like to introduce my guest today, who is Charlotte Holland, a qualified architect. And Charlotte, I will pass it over to you.
Yeah, so thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.
So I'm a recently qualified architect, qualified October 2023.
Yay!
So it's been an interesting few months.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, congratulations for finally chartering. Honestly, I feel that so much.
Good.
That's kind of like, I don't know.
Okay,
like,
so,
is there anything you want to know?
Well, I'd say I call it the origin story.
Yeah,
so what is your
that.
origins story? Did you
like
become a villain or did you become a superhero?
Well, that's the real question, isn't it? I love this. I need to read up on my comic books. So...
Were you born in London?
I was born
Are
in
you
London,
UK-based? Yeah.
Croydon,
Nice.
sunny Croydon. Greatest place in the UK.
And I can't really diss it too much.
I mean, I can. But no, it's an interesting place. You know, I still live in the house I was born in. Only child.
Oh, wow.
Went to public school throughout, like...
Do you play well with other people, being an only child?
Depends who you ask. No, I think, I had a friend growing up who lived next door to me, and we were like 2 weeks apart, so we were like sisters in a way.
Nice.
But yeah, I think Croydon's an interesting place. Like, there's a lot of poverty, a lot of like depravity, but also, not depravity, deprivation. That's the word I'm looking for. Depravity. But also, like in recent years, it's been like every other like South London borough, like gentrified, and I think it's a very interesting place to live now, and it's a very interesting place to see develop. I think for me, my upbringing was always to have compassion for people and to not like see people for like stereotypes or see people for like their so-called perceived shortcomings. I think for me, it's always been about like making the world a better place for others.
Right.
And I think that probably is why I am now an architect. I don't think it was quite that straightforward, though. I'm not going to lie.
Let's say, for instance, I think when I started tracking back what my practice was, I think there was a moment as a kid that I drew a Walt Disney book, and I kept trying and trying and trying, and I couldn't get it right. And I did finally get it right, and then I went and showed my school teacher, and she was, I think I was in maybe like year 3, and she was like, this is really good, stick with this. And that was pretty much the only reason why I kind of just stayed into the art space.
Yeah.
So when you were in school, were there any subjects that you kind of gravitated to? What was the evolution to kind of get into college, making your decision on what grades and...
Yeah, so I think for me, like, I've always been interested in, like, creativity and, like, what the human brain can do. I don't think... Like, my brain's always been... You know how you have people that are either interested in maths or interested in English? My brain's always been in the English side of things. I jumped around a lot with different interests as a kid, which, yeah, I can't really pinpoint, like, a moment when I was young. But, like... in secondary school, like, I had a teacher who was really supportive and, like, really encouraged me to get into, like, product design, graphic products and that sort of thing. And then, you know, I was like, oh, what can I do with that? And he was like, well, there's lots of different things you can do. You can do, you know, he started talking about landscape architecture. He started talking about, like, various different things.
Right.
And then when I went to go do my A-levels, you know, architecture kept sticking out. And I guess it was sort of about being able to, it was that making a difference thing. Like, I've always felt like I want to leave the world better than I found it. For somebody, it doesn't have to be, you know, like, massively, like, yeah, I'm just going to create a utopian world and it's going to be fantastic and everyone will be happy. Because it sounds like a cult, right? Probably shouldn't say that. But, you know, I just think... like, growing up with, like, financial hardship and growing up and seeing a lot of people that were worse off than me, not because, and you know, we struggled, but not because of anything that they did or that they weren't working hard, but just the cards that society have dealt them.
So I don't know what year it would have been, for instance, was Croydon very English when you were living there? Because I think when my family came to the UK, there was a decision to have us to move to South, but my mum didn't quite like it because I think the further out you got, it just felt less comfortable for her. Yeah. So what was Croydon like as a kid? What was the community? I guess the different multicultural communities around at that time? Yeah,
so I think it's always been, to use, for the want of a better term, like a melting pot of, like, people. And I think that's what makes it so interesting as a place, because you've got merging of different cultures. And when I was at school, that was normal. Like, and then, you know, I went to, like, a sixth form in Surrey, and it wasn't like that, and I just couldn't understand it. And then people started having a different viewpoint, and, like, then I went to university, and then I had people, like, insulting the fact that people, like, architects would do things like social housing. And it's like, why? Like, that makes no sense, because I thought it was, like, beneath them, for example, and it was ridiculous. Honestly, I can't.
Okay.
Beneath them.
Right.
Like, okay, you crack
and who
on.
are these people?
Oh, just some people that
graphic designers.
No. Architecture students.
Oh,
but
nice.
we won't name names. Like, I don't know where they are now. I don't know if they've qualified. I don't know. But like, this idea that, you know, it's beneath you because you've had privilege. It's beyond me. Like, I feel like, you know, a lot of my family grew up in the system, in social housing, and I feel like housing in particular is a human right. It shouldn't be something that you make profit out of. It shouldn't be anything like that. It should be, you know, I think that, for me, was like the start, and education as well, right? So, like, no matter your background, income, I feel like everyone should have the same opportunities in life, and you know, you can track research, you can track statistics, kind of speak. And statistically, like, those from lower income backgrounds, underrepresented, like, groups of people, like, they aren't dealt the same cards, they're not given the same opportunities. And I know that I speak from a place of privilege, being a white woman, right? I know that. But it doesn't mean that I don't see a problem and want to somehow contribute to making that change. And actually, I never thought it was very fair. Even as a kid, like, I never really understood the complexities of it. I don't think there should be any complexities about it, honestly. I think it's ridiculous, and I think it's a system that is upheld for various reasons. And again, we've got to leave politics at the door here. But that basically is sort of, and there are other things that have happened in my life since, but that is sort of like, we'll get to that, but it's, that's sort of why I do what I do. And that's where might always be my driver, is just to try and create some equity in the world. And I mean, it sounds so cliche, right? It sounds like, oh yeah, I want to save the world, you know, I'm Iron Man or whatever. Like, but, you know, like, that's what drives me. It always has been.
So then, I think when you got to university, what was it like in your first year of architecture? I ask this because for me, I think I'd come in from a previous degree, so I came in from interior design, but we studied architecture for the first year. And then I took a year out and then transferred to London Metropolitan. So it was a joint degree, but coming as a sort of like fashion student, fine art student, I literally was struggling in the fact I knew nothing about scales. Didn't know what the hell I was doing. So for you, did you just kind of hit the ground running? Was the classes, did everything just click? Or were there moments where you're like, I don't absolutely have a clue what's going on here?
So I think for me, obviously I did like DT, and then I did an art foundation before I went into architecture school. And that helped a bit. I thought I hit the ground running. I was very mistaken. Like, it got to the point where I could only do it for so long. And then, you know, for me, I never really understood the cryptic sort of feedback you'd get in architecture school, like, oh, just do, you know, like this or like this. And it's like, isn't this my project? Am I not meant to take ownership over it? And I learned a lot, right? I learned that it's okay to have different opinions, but it took me a while to get there. Right. And I think I did struggle. Like, for the first year, I was okay. And then I started to struggle a bit. I didn't really understand why.
Was that reflective in like your submission in terms of your grades, or because obviously the grading system is quite subjective, so
yeah, it definitely was.
Okay.
And I think as well, like, again, there was this expectation which kind of shocked me, that everyone should be in 40 hours a week in the studio. And I think it doesn't work for everybody like that. And if you weren't in, maybe you weren't learning as much. And that's, you know, that's, again, another product of, like, I think it's great to learn from your peers, but actually, like, it took some accessibility out of it for some people, including myself. I, you know, had a lot of anxiety going into the studio because on like the first sort of like week, we were all told we were competing with each other for the same jobs, and it created this really toxic environment. Right. And I don't think that helps. And I think it's still visible in the profession today. Like you see a lot of competitiveness instead of like we're all working towards a common goal. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what's missing at the moment.
So that was what, part one, which is 3 years. Yeah. 4 if you have to resit, depending on what happens in life. And then how, I don't want to use the word easy, but what was the job market like when you finished your part one?
I mean, it was okay. Like, it took me 3 months to get a job. I applied for 150 jobs. Yeah, it was nuts. 3 months. Which, you know, compared to like now, like being a part one, I don't think I think it's a lot harder to get that job, right?
What do you think it was about your portfolio that made you the right fit for that practice?
I honestly don't know. Like, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I don't necessarily think it was my portfolio, if I'm honest. Like, they were a great practice. They were really fantastic. And they were looking to really support, like, people whether it be like women in architecture or people from like underrepresented backgrounds, they were really looking to drive that. I think that helped, I'm not gonna lie. But I also think, you know, I'd sort of gotten to that point where I'd had some interviews and they were really, really difficult, and it just sort of clicked. And it was great. I really enjoyed my time in part one. I learnt so much.
What kind of things did you end up doing in part one? Because there is this horror story that you end up in, I don't know, door schedules or being a CAD monkey.
No, you know what, right? Like, because it was a small practice and the director was just, he was a really nice guy. I worked closely with him, and I did planning applications, wrote design access statements, went to site visits. I had the opportunity.
So wait, obviously you were, sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine, it's fine.
So you were a part one, writing planning applications, or
like assisting, so working alongside the director and working alongside. I wasn't ever like sort of, like I was pushed out of my comfort zone, but not in a way I couldn't handle, and I was very comfortable with that. It gave me a lot of ownership around that sort of thing. I had the opportunity to work on, it was mainly like private residential, like the developer stuff. But I had the opportunity to work on some like community centres in India, which was fantastic, and some factories and stuff. So yeah, I think it was a really good experience. And like when I compare it to
part two,
no, not even part two, other people's experiences during that time. Like I know somebody that really struggled to get a job and really, really had a difficult time. And I count myself very lucky to be in this position that I was in. And yeah, I'm really grateful for that, because I think it taught me what a non-toxic workplace is. And when I compare it to
your first job in architecture was a non-toxic environment.
It was non-toxic, honestly. It was like very supportive environment. And when I compare that to some of the other experiences I've had, whether it be in architecture or outside of architecture, I think it helped me know like the toxicity of those places were not okay.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, it was really, I had a really positive experience at part one.
And so would you say, in terms of like networking, obviously these are things that they try to get us to do and stuff like that, but how easy would you say it was to retain your network and friendship circles within the architectural community from undergrad into like the working environment? Yeah,
so like with undergrad, like it was very cliquey, if I'm honest. And some people were really lovely. Some people, you know, very competitive, not so like supportive.
Yeah.
One of my best friends, I still talk to her to this day. She's doing a PhD at London Met on architectural mapping, which is fantastic. But I think people, either a lot of people fall off, they don't do part two, or they do part two and then they decide that they don't want to do part three. But I think things like LinkedIn are a really good tool to reconnect with those people. So I think for me, I kept my sort of like, because I found like part one studying a little bit like not so supportive and a little bit like competitive and a little toxic in general. Yeah. I kept my circle quite small. Same can't be said for part two. I enjoyed part two, but I did struggle a lot more in part two. Right. But I think again, it's about having that confidence to be who you are. And I think there's been points in my life where I haven't felt that. And there's been points in my life where I've felt really inadequate. And we'll get onto like why, perhaps in a bit. We can discuss that when we come to discussing like part two and post part two. But it, it's been a journey. Maintaining professional relationships are difficult, but I think it's a lot easier today than it may have been like 10 years ago.
Yeah, of course. Okay, and so where did you choose to do your part two? And also, at the point where you were starting to get into your part two, did you pick your first practice based off of your research areas of interest, as in like what the practice was doing, or was it more of, no, I just need to get experience and get into a practice and maybe learn the technicalities of what it is to get into a practice, would you say that your motivations for choosing the practice or even the university that you decided to do your part 2 in were drivers based off of your own personal practice?
Is that, sorry, my part 1 practice or post part 2?
Your part 1 practice, did you already have did you have an understanding of what you would want to focus on as like a long-term architect, or was at that point still a little bit, free and just expressive?
Yeah, I think the second one. I think for me, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't know because I hadn't had that experience. And I think, at university, you're given various different projects that are guided by your tutors or the head of school, whatever it may be. Where I did my undergrad, there wasn't a choice of units or anything like that. So we got given a project. And I really enjoyed studying where I studied, which was at UCA at part 1. I just think and I don't have a bad word to say about UCA as a university. I think there was some, no. I think for me, I enjoyed it, but I think there was some and I have people that I know who went there in previous years and they had a great experience. For me, I thought there was some people within my cohort that maybe just weren't as supportive, and it wasn't anything to do with the university as a thing. And when I did my part 2, I went to Greenwich simply because I wanted to stay at home.
Right.
And again, my tutor at Greenwich was fantastic, honestly, really supportive, to the point where I was having a really difficult time in my personal life. He put everything on hold and went to go and find student support for me right then and there. And I can't stress that enough. He was so supportive, and he basically, along with the people that I met in masters, got me through my masters because I really struggled. And I couldn't work out why, because every time I tried to do work, it felt like I was breaking through a brick wall to even start. And then, it took me longer than masters takes, so I had to resit a few times.
So a typical architectural masters is 2 years.
Yeah, it took me double that. But, and I really struggle with coming to terms with that, because when you see it on your CV, you're like, why is it taking 4 years? But actually, I learnt so much more in redoing it. And sometimes life gets in the way, and I've never been asked about it.
Yeah.
And I really was paranoid for ages that I'd be asked.
Yeah.
I've never been asked about it.
I know. It's just these internal fears. I actually felt a hell of a lot of shame. My part 1 was supposed to be 3 years, and it ended up being 4, and on the brink of dropping out and then having to do half of the year this year and then split it for the next year. But I found that it was really good for me.
Yeah.
I kind of got over the shame of it all and was just okay, this is an opportunity to just pick up on things that I'm weak on.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. And then what was your project like at part 2? Your first year part 2 project.
Okay. So it was kind of wild, actually. So I did a hotel that was in Soho, and I drew on the sordid past of Soho and created this.
Oh, that is beautiful.
It was really cool, but I think again it's one of those things where it's subjective to everyone, and perhaps I think I get really ambitious ideas, and then for whatever reason, at that time, life got in the way. I started struggling with getting things done. And actually, while I was doing my part 2, I really randomly actually came across an article in Psychology Today or something like that about adult ADHD. And I was reading it, and it, honestly, something just clicked, because it felt like I was reading my life story.
Right.
And typically when I was younger, and typically even now, people have this perception of ADHD as it's a young boy at school who can't sit still, bouncing off the walls, bouncing up and down in their chair, whatever it may be. ultimately, it shocked me when I read that, because I was like, wow, like that would explain a lot. But then I was like, but is that actually like what's going on?
Yeah.
So I went to the doctor, and this was in my last year of masters. So I want to say it because like I failed my first year twice. So I did first year 3 times during COVID as well.
Wait, first year
Masters.
Right.
3 times during COVID. I'm pretty sure COVID and me not being able to go and distract myself and go out, whatever, was the only reason that I ended up being able to get it done, because I had nothing else to do. Honestly, because, I mean, my husband used to nag me, and not in a horrible way, because he really wanted me to do well, but like, I just couldn't do it. It just was like it was an invisible barrier, and I couldn't understand why. For years and years, I was sitting there going, why can't I do this? I used to be able to do this. Why can't I get things done? I used to be able to do it. What is wrong with me? What's happened to me?
You internalised it.
And I internalised it for a long time. And these feelings of like inadequacy and not being good enough came through. And ultimately, when I read that article,
it's kind of shed some light for you.
It shed some light. So I went to my doctor, and he was like, okay, finish your masters first, you've got enough on, and then we'll investigate that. And I ended up getting diagnosed with ADHD, and it's a combined type, so it's inattentive and hyperactive. And then, you know, that's been, it provides some like relief at first, but that's been a complicated journey as well, because then you start looking about, you know, the things you do. You start looking at the things you do, the way you are, and start going, well, how much of that is actually me?
And how much is it ADHD?
And that's been a very interesting sort of like journey, and it's still one I'm on, although it's my perception of myself has improved significantly, but it's still a journey.
So I think you mentioned something about the type of ADHD, and you said you had 2 types.
Yeah.
And based off of, I can't remember the terminologies you use, but I think you said one was
inattentive, and one's hyperactive.
And hyperactive.
Yeah.
How does that work?
I really do
doing
not know.
architecture?
So I think, you know, like ADHD is a thing. Like it's really interesting because you can hyper focus on things you're interested in like that. It's actually like a magic trick. It's
hyper focus,
like ridiculous.
I know. Yeah.
So yeah, you end up like, if you're really passionate about something, you end up being able to do it. And that's, I think, another reason why I got through deadlines, because that's when the hyperfocus would kick in 3 nights before handing. And I was like, you're joking. I stayed up for like 72 hours, would crack it out, somehow just scrape it, right? And it wasn't sustainable, and it wasn't like right. But I think the hyperactivity and like feeds the hyperfocus, it feeds all of that stuff. So I get really passionate.
I think
about
maybe I should get a
things.
test on ADHD.
Honestly, man, it's just hard life.
I think I get a dopamine hit just off doing the projects that I'm doing now. It's just like consistent, and I'd have to remind myself that it's actually not healthy to stay up till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and then think you're going to work the next day. It's just, and do it for 5 days.
So you do it for work, I do it for Netflix. So.
Okay, let's get on to mental health, undergrad. And actually,
That's hilarious. Sorry.
Because we never actually, I think when I was studying it as well, there was no such conversation about mental health in architecture. You just suck it up. No one actually cares.
It's seen as a rite of passage, right?
Yeah, like you're gonna be the punching bag. They're gonna tell you
like,
it's quite
I went
ugly.
through this, so you have to go through
Basically.
this. And yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's improving. Like from what I can hear, I think there's a lot more focus and attention about it, especially since things like, you know, you had like the Bartlett stuff come out and how like...
Oh, so I'm a bit out of the scope. Spill the tea on Bartlett.
No, so it's not even that. So it's like just, the Bartlett was just like the example that like was used. I think it can, like it is not just a Bartlett problem. There were some tutors that were like not behaving professionally, essentially, and like and it was just not or like some members of staff, like making students feel very...
Actually, I think it's actually quite poignant that we identify what did you identify as bad behaviour from tutors who were raising the next generation of architects?
I think, you know, I've got to be very careful what I say here, but no, I think it's things like, you know, creating hostile environments, having favourite students, having, you know, and like the lack of empathy or the lack of support, and actually instead going on a little bit of a power trip. But I think, you know, we're starting now as people, as a society and as a profession to recognise, actually, no, that's not okay. And I still think there's work to be done. There's always work to be done. I think things like, you know, you've got the Future Architects Front and things like that are driving that. I think it's incredibly brave. I think it's really needed. I think ultimately there's been this attitude around architecture as it's like you know, you see these league tables, it's like it's the most hours of work you have to do, and like, oh, everyone else suffered, you have to suffer. It's a 3-year degree, but you have to put 60 hours a week in, and you know, it drains you.
Out of curiosity, did you work and study? Was that possible for you?
I did in masters, and make of that what you will, because I had to, like, I needed to, and I did, you know, I worked with children, and I did like some maths and English tutoring, but it was like mornings and then afternoons, so I was able to study. But in part one, I would never have been able to, and I really empathise with people that did, but you saw their grades suffer. Yeah. And I don't, and again, we talk about, excuse me, sorry. We talk about accessibility to the profession, and that isn't accessible because it immediately excludes people that need to work. And I think, you know, that's something that needs to be answered for, because, you know, like even things like printing cost hundreds of pounds at a time.
Oh, don't get us started. It's like they don't even tell you what it's going to actually cost you to be an architecture student. You're going to get student loan. Okay, how much is your student loan?
Just covers your rent.
Okay. And
Can't afford to eat.
Okay. All right. And then, printing, and then model making, and materials, and glue, and...
Yeah.
So...
And all these books that you should read.
Oh, yeah. Required, prescribed, reference. Yeah.
It's hard. It's really hard. And I think, you know...
Oh, not to talk of the trips.
Oh, yeah, no, when they were the site. That's what got me. That always got me, because it's like, hold on. How are you expecting someone to pay hundreds and hundreds of pounds to go on a trip? And if they don't... Yeah,
you miss out on the project.
Yeah. You have to do all your site research. It's hard. And you end up feeling excluded.
Of course.
And, yeah, I think, you know, I've always said that, okay, if they need... Even if, like... And, again, I don't actually know how, like... the tuition fee, the university system works, how much they actually get of it, don't know.
What, in terms of how much the university gets of the fees?
I know they get it, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how much these things cost. I don't know the ins and outs of like the economics behind the university. Of course. But I've always said, like, they should make it clear, and they should allow for that. They should allow for it, even if you have to, like, for like a grant system, because ultimately what you spend studying architecture isn't the same as what you spend studying something like maths.
I tell you what, when I first started architecture, I think my tuition fee, something like 1,300. Something stupid. I know it was dumb.
Okay, what was that like? Can't relate.
Well, basically,
I'm like 9K a year generation.
In the grand scheme of things, I actually have less student loan than my siblings, because I think when my siblings started, it was already on 10K. Yeah. So by the time I finished my undergrad and then moved into my part 2, I still had clocked up less than my siblings. And so in terms of like, so now you've graduated, you're on part, well, you're on 0 parts at this point.
0 parts left, yeah. Excited about that.
How have you, I'm curious to your work-life balance, especially with the fact that you said you were diagnosed with ADHD in your part 2.
Yeah, so it was during that summer after my part 2, and it was 2021.
So, okay, so I remember putting out things for post-pandemic and pre-pandemic. But what was it really like trying to study in 2020? And thinking with if we assume that, life is like a boxing match and you go through these cycles, and with architecture, it's like an athlete's game. You have to keep going in and keep retraining and do this and do that and do this. And then you get to 2020 and all your dreams and agendas and everything else is at a standstill with your ADHD, with your background, your life. How did your mental health and your trajectory for architecture and even your outlook on life change or evolve during 2020?
You know what, 2020 is a blur. It's just actually
serious?
a blur. No, but I think, right, so I've already, said, I wasn't diagnosed at that point, so I didn't understand that part of me, right? I still worked during 2020.
Were you furloughed?
No, so I was working with children.
Right.
So we worked with key worker children. So for me, it was like my normal life. It was really weird. I couldn't go and do exercise. I couldn't do those sorts of things. But I wasn't just stuck in the house. So I was able to go and still work, and then, like a breakfast after school club or a holiday club, and then come home, study, and then do that. But ultimately, what ended up happening was I was forced to study, because what else was I going to do? And I don't, my mental health, I've had anxiety in the past, and I think, ultimately I feel like that was ADHD presenting itself, because since I was diagnosed and taking medication and stuff, which is a personal choice.
For my anxiety tablets. The day I decided, I didn't even know I think for me, the difference is, oh my God, is that what I was dealing with?
Honestly.
Is that what I was carrying with no meds?
Honestly.
Because you want to be like, oh, I'm not a drug addict, or I'm not on medication, or...
you know what? I feel like if it helps you, right?
Oh, please.
Who are you to, who am I to judge anybody? And who is anybody else to judge me?
Yeah.
But it was the anxiety just went. It was actually shocking. I did not realise, what it was like to not worry about things. It was so odd.
Do you feel it in your body, or is it more of a head?
Both, I think.
Oh my God.
It was chaotic.
Yeah.
But 2020, again, blur. And
Do you think that's PTSD because it's a blur?
I don't even know. I was just annoyed, right? And this is going to sound so silly, but I was just annoyed at the constant, oh, we're coming out of this. No, we're not. Psych. And I remember it because it was my birthday. My birthday's on Halloween.
Right.
And Boris announced lockdown on my birthday. I was like, mate, I had dinner plans. Not that was the most important thing.
Yeah.
But it was I struggle with uncertainty.
Meanwhile, Boris and the boys were having
Honestly,
underground parties.
Don't
and
get me
thinking
started.
it's just like...
Don't get me started. Oh, no. But honestly, I think, I hated the uncertainty of it. I really always struggled with uncertainty. But, as I say, I was forced into a situation where all I could do was my uni work. Couldn't go and distract myself much. Well, I could, but I knew I had to get it done. And actually, what else was I going to do? So actually, without lockdown, I don't know if I'd have passed. It sounds really bizarre, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
But it worked for me, because what was I going to do to distract myself?
Did you find that they were more accommodating because you now had to just, we had everything online?
You know what, yeah. And I really, really think that still is something that helps, because there's a lot of people, not just with various ADHD, autism, whatever, neurodivergence, but there's also people with severe social anxiety, which I thought I had at the time. Again, didn't know it was ADHD. I just hated going in because I didn't want to be judged. I hated going into uni because I felt vulnerable and I didn't like it, and the lights were too bright, and it was just a lot.
God, yeah. I had a friend that was very sensitive to that type of stuff as well, yeah.
And that's the thing, coming from part 1 where everyone was competing and critical of everybody else, well, not everyone, but you know what I mean. I was so scared of being told, oh, I'm not good enough. And I don't understand why the lights are so bright. And it was too
And the funny thing
much.
is, architects designed that.
Honestly.
So what the hell?
Honestly. Like, and I get, you know, and I really want to get into like things like as a result of that, like designing for neurodivergence, like,
yeah,
but also like the well accreditation stuff. I really want to.
I want to get into that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I designed a SEN school for autistic children.
Yeah.
For my part 1, and ever since then, I'm obsessed with materials, textures, like things that people would maybe describe as, like, everything is like sound to me. So when I'm, for instance, designing a room with lighting, I'm not talking about, yes, we call it temperature, but I actually refer to it as volume.
Yeah.
Because what I realised about children on the spectrum, and I chose a specific catchment, which was blind and deaf. So dealing with those two type of cases, you'd have to design the school in a certain way, you know, and I think Southwark train station was the site. So it was almost like, how do you contend with the train station with autistic children that could be possibly blind and or deaf, and you keep them in a 8-hour class for the whole day. So now I'm just really completely interested into that stuff. In terms of your ability to you know, when you get to part 3, you have to write your 5-year business plan of how you intend to become, I don't know, the king of architecture, or how do you intend to like hit the ground running?
No, genuinely, right. So I'm not just saying this because of being associated with Westminster. I really enjoyed part 3.
So did I.
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I loved doing the in-depth research. I loved finding that and commenting on it. And I'm really, you know, it was reflected in my grades, and it was reflected in the way I engaged with it. Even my part 3 interview, I met one of the examiners like a few months later at Reba.
Really?
She was like, it was a great exam. Pretty sure it's because I complimented her necklace, but that's not the point. Honestly, it was a great necklace. No, but I think I just knew what I needed to know, and I had to be really comfortable in that topic. But for my 5-year plan, right, I struggled with this because when we got told we had to make one, I was like, I don't like doing that. The reason I don't like doing that is because I end up overthinking it, setting myself up for disappointment, and, you know, I like to, you know, I know that life isn't going to follow the path that I want it to follow.
Yeah.
And I think that's valid. So I thought, okay, what do I actually want to do? So I made, and I'd had to do this after I qualified, but I made like a career map, and I'm like, okay, I'm really interested in inclusion in the built environment, especially from a neurodivergent perspective, because ultimately, like, certain buildings don't work for me.
No, yeah.
And there's so much of the population that if we're living our life in buildings and they don't serve us, and actually they make us feel more uncomfortable than not, we're not doing our job right.
Do you know what? I think it's really interesting that you point that out, because I remember when, even at undergrad or even part 2, projects that were almost based within sensory exploration were almost not necessarily treated with that much respect, because almost, how do you quantify it?
Yeah, but there's no, that's the thing, you can't, because everybody's different. Everybody's lived experience is different. And there are certain, I've been to CPDs about, using colour for blind people.
Well,
and
we all, do you know what?
Blindness.
In our part 3 class, I think Wilfred showed us a picture, and everyone saw it in different colours. And
Really?
I think in that moment, I was like, no. So we all don't, me and you could both look at green, and you might see a slightly warmer or cooler temperature.
Honestly, my husband's colourblind, and I always say he's green or red. And it's hilarious because when I was trying to pick a colour for our bedroom, I wanted sage green. Absolutely could not even, because he couldn't see the difference between any of them. And it was so funny because, not in a mean way, but it's so interesting because actually people try and create tonal contrast in spaces, and sometimes that's not translating.
Yeah.
And I think there's great resources by is it Asker Nobel who founded, who do Dulux. They do CPDs on like colour for inclusivity, and I think everyone should, like, it's free on RBA, like CPD. Like I think everyone should go and look at that, if I'm honest, because, you know, it's worth noting, like, certain percent of our population are blind, certain percent are deaf, certain percent can't, like, walk very well, certain percent are neurodivergent, and actually there's no such thing as normal. There's no such thing as one right person. Sorry, I know you're desperate to say something.
No, like, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm like, well, if that's the case, if everyone does see things differently in a different colour, wavelength or frequency, then when it comes to practice, and we were all sitting there, or some of us are sitting there picking paint swatches, materiality, working on Photoshop, post-production, artwork, when your line manager or whoever it is does not agree with what you've done, is that because it's technically wrong, or they don't see in the same frequency as you do?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't really know the answer. I can't see
No,
through
but then
their
it does
eyes.
chuck it up to, you know...
Well, yeah, but I think this is where it comes down to, because everyone will say, oh, well, how do I design for everyone? I don't think you can.
No.
But you have to know who you're designing for.
Right.
And I think consultation is so important. Like, ask people what they need from a space, and it doesn't cost anything. And actually, it will get you further and get you more support for the project. It might cost a bit. You might have to do, like, a public consultation or, like, but with the internet and things, you can do different things. And I think there's a lot of professionals, whether it be in architecture or anywhere else, right, who think they know best and think that they don't have to ask because they're a genius or whatever it is, right? It's not just architecture. But I think, you know, like, and I've read a lot recently about, like, access to the profession and how, you know, arts funding's been cut in schools. Like, people aren't getting into it, but also, you know, various things surrounding low-income backgrounds not being able to afford to study.
Okay, so let's start
architecture.
breaking it down. When we're talking low-income backgrounds, according to the statistical records, who are the communities that fall within the low statistical backgrounds within the United Kingdom?
Ethnic minorities.
Ethnic minorities as a whole, or does it narrow down to specific minorities?
It definitely narrows down to specific minorities.
In terms of those specific minorities, what would you say would have been the biggest impediments to them getting access?
I think ultimately, and we've had this conversation before, where if you come from a place of privilege, whether that be wealth, whether that be gender, whether that be the colour of your skin, whether you've got a disability or not, if you come from a place of privilege, you are told that you can do anything you want to do from a very young age. And I recognise, obviously, you know, I grew up in a low-income household, but I was still told that I could do everything I wanted to do because I have privilege, right? And I know that. Not everyone's told that. And I think that, combined with the like public school cut funding, you know, and who's going to be in public schools? Well, it's not going to be the people that have the privilege.
No,
always.
it would, yeah. Okay, so let's start really...
Are we going to put the words right? So
Yeah.
Is that what we're doing? Because I'm not sure I'm qualified. I think I might need to call someone.
I think we need to start really opening it up. Okay, so when you... Okay, let me start from me. I was born in Nigeria. I came over here when I was about 3. I came from a community where all I saw was black people. And then I came over here. It's only as an adult that I'm now sort of like retracing what that would have been like for me in terms of being comfortable as a Igbo kid with the level of personality that 0 to 3, 4-year-olds have, and then having to kind of temper that character or personality because it no longer fits with the normal narrative of the environment that you're in. So for me, I think I've been very hyper aware and hyper alert from a very young age, because what was normal to me, I had to get used to everything. So I have always been aware that it's not just white, black, Asian, it's multicultural. But I candidly say that even though I've had multicultural friends, I've never felt comfortable or maybe safe to speak to a white girl and just ask certain questions that may be like, is it safe or is it respectful to ask that? Do you get what I mean? And obviously, this is also from my own protection, because I don't want to then leave myself open to conversations that I can explain my black experience, but at some point I have noticed with different ethnic groups that there is a point that the person I'm speaking to checks out. It's like your eyes glaze, like it's no longer my problem. Whatever it is you're saying is no longer my problem. And it's these little sort of like microaggressions that in my mind has not made it comfortable for me to really get within a collective and say, okay, maybe these are the things that are bothering me, because I know facts that I can say something and someone will be like, well, that didn't happen to me. Well, yeah, no one's saying that didn't happen to you, but why is my experience now less valid?
Yeah. Because they didn't have that same experience. They didn't have that experience.
They don't necessarily understand it. Oh, well, that teacher didn't do that to me.
Doesn't matter. It's your experience. And ultimately, firstly, may I just say, if it looks like my eyes are glazing over, it's ADHD. I genuinely,
No.
Just in case, just for the record, it's not that deep. But no, genuinely, I think it's so important. I think everybody, and this is something I've always felt, right? Everybody should have the space to feel validated. Everybody should have the space to feel heard.
Architecture hasn't made me feel safe or validated.
I think that's valid, because I think I'm going to validate what you're saying. No, I think, yeah. Ultimately, I think, it's become something where, we were speaking earlier, and I don't even know how to describe it. See, this is the problem. My brain's working 100 miles an hour and I can't even describe it. I think architecture as a profession has been historically rich, white, old men.
Of course.
Please don't not give me a job.
I think we could, if people are still not giving people jobs in 24 because of the real actual truth of what the reality is, then I just don't think we should just pretend anymore.
Well, this is it, and I think you have to, at what point are you just gonna? I don't think it's okay to see. And, for whatever reason, I don't think it's okay to see a problem in the system and just go along with it.
No, but a lot of people do.
A lot of people do because they're scared. I don't think it's about not caring.
Do you think they're scared?
I think they're scared.
Yeah?
At the moment, I think it's still very underrepresented.
No, it's fully underrepresented. I don't know. It's so funny. I actually don't know the wider statistics of employment in architecture. All I know is that I have absolutely now made the so-called elite of 0.04% of black women.
To me.
And I'm just like, am I supposed to feel like I made it? I am actually. It genuinely leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Should we get the confetti cannons out and
just blow it out? But then also, the spaces that I'm in now, as a qualified architect, funny enough, leading my own practice.
People still don't treat you
Oh
with
my
that
God,
same respect.
it's a little, and that's the thing. If you look at the different sort of schools that I went to, I chose those schools based off of experiences that I learned in different areas, like finance. I temped for a hedge fund company, and I overheard them going through the interview process, and they started whittling down based on performance, how they did, blah blah blah, and then they got the top group of people. Then they started whittling down based on university.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I was like, as a black person, that's what you're doing to your own collective. Oh, you're gonna see Warsaw, you're gonna see Tottenham, you're gonna see, I don't know, maybe London Met. You're going to put 1, 2, and 3 together and then maybe not even look at the portfolio.
Yeah.
So in my mind, the price tag to remedy that was to get into the RCA, which I did. But now I forget about those things now, but I have earned my stripes. But at the same time, it's almost still people tend to not have confidence in me, even though it's like she's chartered, she's Reba. And I understand it, but also how many me's came into the practices and were not treated in a way that makes them feel safe, makes them feel able to deal with the learning curve, because every practice has a different learning curve. And how many practices were happy to, for instance, you have ADHD, maybe that affects how much you're able to do on a project or how much you understand. And
I think that's it. I don't think the thing is, right, people will try and place limitations on you based on certain things. And what I'm hearing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, from you, is actually people can't see the past the colour of your skin. Like, at all. And they don't choose to. And they don't realise it. And I don't mean it like I don't like...
No, I hear you. No. This is a safe space.
Sure?
And we can being recorded, we can agree to disagree, and come on.
I think people do. I think there will be people that acknowledge that, but like some people will have that unconscious bias, whether or even conscious bias, right?
And I think that's what people don't necessarily understand, the unconscious bias.
Yeah.
That's why I was very particular in asking you, what community did you grow up in Croydon? How was that looking in variation to maybe when you went to secondary school? Because for instance, I grew up in Tottenham. I went to St Anne's Primary School, went to an all-girls school in Hornsey, but North London is quite like you said for Croydon, a melting pot of different cultures. When I went to choose colleges, I wanted to go to Barnet College because they had a great art school, and honestly, that bus ride from Wood Green into Barnet, there was a moment that I became acutely aware that I'm the only black person on the bus. And I'm like, this don't feel safe. I don't know if I want to do like a whole year getting on this bus. And obviously, yes, growing up in Tottenham and going to Hornsey Girls, back then you had D&K, I can't remember all the other schools, but we would all break and come up after school and stuff. And so I was kind of aware of, the different kind of school. And I don't want to call it gangs because that's what the media would like to term it as. Because as kids, we know what was going on in the schools and the different whatevers. But it definitely made me feel like, no, but if a fight breaks out, I'm not going to lie. I don't know if I'm going to feel safe in Barnet, bruv, because we're the black folks.
Yeah.
So I had to think about that level of things when going into school and education. But equally, I still took on board what the teachers would say. And they'd say stuff like, don't let a university pick you. Give yourself the possibility to pick which universities you go to. And also they were like, go out of your comfort zone. Don't stay, if you're a creative, don't stay in the same community that you've been in all your life. Like, go outside. So my art foundation was Croydon College. And so for you, who is a British born Caucasian white woman, and you've gone into architecture and you've experienced some, personally, I think you've experienced a great level of injustice, even though you're actually white. I would not have expected some of the things the ways you were treated, because for me, it's almost like, well, it's not to say that we don't all hurt each other. We all have our own multicultural community issues. But if we are going to be mean to our own people that we have close relationships to, closely knit, we have this in common, and we ain't really going to support each other, I can't expect you to support me.
This is it, right? Like, it comes down to kindness. And people showing each other empathy. Yeah. And I think there's a real lack of that. As I said, you talk about the injustices, people telling me if they knew I had ADHD, they wouldn't have hired me. Yeah, that. I'm
sorry, could you repeat that? Just for the mic, please.
Yeah, no, I worked somewhere, and I'm not going to say where.
No, we don't need to talk about the locations, but...
But, there was this comment that, they couldn't afford me. Because they couldn't afford to make accommodations for me. They wouldn't have hired me.
I am so disappointed because...
It's horrible.
Employability laws.
Yeah, I know.
What it takes to set up your own architecture practice. If you've actually taken the time to do ethics, ARB, principles, and you would fix your own mouth and tell somebody, we can't accommodate. And side note, is there an independent board that actually like takes complaints from students of architecture to say, well, this is wrong and maybe like we should do things differently? Is there something like that?
Should be. I feel like somewhere like, and this is where I'm going to pass the buck onto like the institutions that govern the profession, ARB, REBA, should have that, because it's not a secret that there's a lot of mistreatment in architecture. It's almost the unspoken truth.
Rules, yeah.
Like everybody knows. Everybody talks about toxic workplaces. Everybody talks about unpaid overtime. Everybody talks about abuse of power.
Yeah.
But nobody is actually doing anything about it.
But then I think...
Or they're saying they can't do anything about it. And I think it won't just take one person.
It takes us all
it
collectively.
It takes a shift of like attitudes. And I don't know what will be the thing that like actually ultimately results in that. I have no idea.
Well, this is where I don't, unfortunately, and I've spoken to older architects, older black architects that have gone back to, you know, maybe were international students and decided to relocate back to their countries of origin. And it's just like, I don't necessarily feel that the top of the iceberg in terms of the people that sit in those seats, I don't necessarily think it's multicultural. And I think because it's not multicultural, and there's only going to be a certain level of tolerance, and let's be honest, in Great Britain, we are very stiff upper lip, and there is a way to do things. And a perfect example, there was someone at some point wanted to make the bathrooms in the practice I was working at multi-sex, and that we could all do that, and you know, for us to be all seen and blah blah blah. And you could, do you know when someone is having that conversation in the office, but then you can sense the energy around the room? And there were some people that obviously did not agree with it, right? But it's almost like, well, we have to accommodate what she's saying, we have to be seen to like take on board what she's saying, but that shit is never going to happen.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
So I almost feel like, how do you fix the problem in architecture when I think it's only recently we got a black REBA president, and even in that, and this is me speaking as someone who temped at the RIBA and PA'd and was part of their like steering groups and taking notes and stuff, even in those rooms, I feel like I'm a bit privileged to have even walked and was employed in those rooms. But I'm sorry to say, those spaces were very whitewashed. I didn't actually see anyone that looks like me
100%.
within those departments per se in leadership positions. And I think my biggest gripe with architecture is that, like, well, what is it going to take for me to get a leadership position?
This is it, right? I think it's like the odds are stacked against you.
Fully.
And, you know, honestly, going back to like being like a child and like not really understanding all of this loaded stuff, like I never just got why. Like, why can't we just look at people for like what they contribute, or look at people for who they are and not see all of this noise? I just never got it. And I really think, like, and I say, you know, that from when I was a kid, obviously there's nuance to it. There's like that risks discounting people's lived experience, which isn't fair. Ultimately, acknowledging that is important. I think, you know, even now, right, I went to, actually at REBA, I went to like a gender and equity like thing. And like, you know, the CEO is a black woman of REBA. But she was saying about how like she had to like make herself be in those rooms. Like she had to fight to even get in the room.
I'm sorry for my French. It is fucking hard. I'm not going to shit you. Whatever is hard for you as an architect.
No, it's like double, right?
It is dumb. I swear to God, I literally dug under the foundations of architecture to get let in.
Yeah.
And it's quite, it is bittersweet for me because I understand that to change the system, you have to be part of the system.
Yeah.
And I have never really wanted to be the vocal person, because what tends to happen when you become vocal is then when they're ready to scapegoat you, who started the insertion?
Exactly. That's the thing, right? I think a lot of people aren't part of that system because they don't agree with the system. And then they sit from the outside and they're like, don't like what's going on over there. I think, you know, the system itself, and this is not just in architecture, this is a system in society in general, is broken because it doesn't work for the majority of people. It works for a very select few. And you were saying about like the board of REBA, but it's not just REBA, right? The board of anything like those institutions, and don't get me wrong, there are some great like people that work at REBA and there's some great things.
No, there are. But I feel like, for instance, I grew up watching Stephen Lawrence die.
Yeah.
I think I was even really inspired by him. And when I remember his parents back then talking about, you know, he wanted to be an architect. Back then, I didn't even know what it was to be an architect. And then when I had to go, I remember the foundation being set up for, I want to say it was essentially initially set up for black children to have access to places like architecture that they wouldn't have originally got. Then because of, you know, the initiatives and everything else, it became clustered as BAME, right? Which is still, you know, multicultural. We still need everybody to be seen and visible. But it left a really bad taste in my mouth that when I go in as a black person, and I don't like to beg, you know, you have to write for every one of these grants, whether it's architecture grant, bursaries, you have to explain to people as to why you deserve that money. And I will cry a river, and someone, or a place like Stephen Lawrence, which was pretty much created for someone like me to get support. The guy literally was like, I commend you for everything that you have gone through because I don't think I could have done it. And essentially, we can't even support you.
Yeah, it's hard.
So what the fuck?
And it's hard, and that's the thing. I think, you know, as I say, those people, and not necessarily that one guy, I don't know who that was.
No, he was really trying. I think
Yeah.
because of the conversations me and him had, he actually came into the RCA because I was self-funded. I self-funded myself at the RCA by working with the practice that I was working for, and that practice, you know, HKS for all intents and purposes, if they didn't give me the opportunity, I wouldn't be here because I didn't do my part one here in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
I couldn't find work, so I went and did my part one in Nigeria. So essentially, if HKS didn't take me on, I'd have probably been still trying to figure out, get work, beg, plead, pillage.
Yeah.
And
I think that's all exacerbated as well by the fact that people go, and I mean, I sound like really posh right now when I say exacerbated. No, but I think it's like, you know, people go like and find a job at the moment, especially like for the generation that like I'm in, you're told, because of all of the stuff that's happened with 2008, all of that, you're lucky to even be there. And that takes a lot of value away from you because you feel like you owe them something. Ultimately, they're, you know, you could be lucky
you
to
made
be
the
there.
cut, right? You made the cut into the class.
But they're lucky to have you. Like, everybody has value. And that's what I think is missing a lot. And that's where I think, you know, people, as I say, aren't willing to undertake, like, be part of it because they feel like, oh, I better not stir the pot, right?
Well, I think we all need to stir the pot because actually, you're a woman, I'm a woman. We both have our situations, but also I think we also need to have men in the conversation because 100%. Also, and you know, being a female architect, you're also contending with your ovaries because at what point do you have children? Honestly, if you're open to having children.
Well, this is it, and I've heard horror stories, and this hasn't happened to me, but I've heard horror stories of people not getting jobs because they're like, they might have kids.
I know.
I've heard those stories, and I think it's horrible, and I think it's not as uncommon as we'd like to think.
No,
it is.
it's fully common, and I'd just like us to recognise the level of poor pay for hours and hours of work. And it's not to say, it's not like it's one architecture practice, or for us to develop all these buildings, our urban environment, the level of coordination that it takes to get one building up. And I literally was like, why are architects not treated like key stage workers?
Well, this is it, right? So with the poor pay thing, it's come about for various, honestly, political reasons, but also we're so impacted by that financial crash in 2008 and probably the ones like recessions before that. We feel so lucky to win the work we try and lowball, and there's no like fee structure. But not only that, then we don't advocate for ourselves as a profession because we just and it comes from education. Oh, you do architecture because you love it. And that's the only reason. The thing is, we all need to live.
Yeah.
Like, we can't just like work and work and work and work and work. We'll be done, and you'll get really talented people leaving the profession.
And which they have. I think there has been out
of architecture, it's like a movement.
Yeah, there's so many. So it's project management, UX, UI design.
Design managers, you can earn bank,
That's the thing.
Well, this is it, right? So you train for 7 years at least. You have to put up with all of this mistreatment, all of this, scrutiny.
Yeah, and it's not 7 years.
Enough.
It's more like 15.
Honestly, being picked apart in things like crits, which no one's calling crits anymore apparently because they're design reviews now. Or something like
politically correct design.
Well, this is it, because you're not being criticised. And I think,
Of course you're being criticised.
You are. And it's not... And changing the word for it isn't going to change
No,
it.
it's not going to change the attitude of the tutors that come in.
It's about... And I've said this in the past, you need to give those tutors the skills to be able to, get rid of their bias.
Here's that grey area then, because how do... Oh, I think I'm pushing on some edges here.
I have absolutely no idea. I have absolutely no idea how you even do that, how you even identify that, how you even quantify that. But it comes back down to, if somebody is, what's the word, taking advantage of their position. I've really just pressed my mic, so that's going to really sound bad. If somebody is, taking advantage and using their position for, doing, for their own ego, whatever it is, who cares what their name is? Who cares where they work? They are not what you want in the institutions that shape the future of the profession. If you want these, we have codes, we have standards, but everything that we do needs to reflect that.
It does.
And that and the thing is, that needs to be upheld. And honestly, I think, that's something that's been failing. A lot of places aren't, you don't have to be REBA chartered practice, so you don't have to pay. To practice, you don't have to be a REBA chartered practice. So you don't have to pay living wage. They say all of this stuff, but there's no enforcement of it because there's no consequences for not doing it at this point. And I think as well, back to what I was saying about the people in power, a lot of people in power have had privilege and they haven't been treated like everyone, so they don't even see it as a problem.
They don't actually understand what you're talking about.
They don't think it's a thing. They're yeah, that doesn't really happen though, because I haven't experienced it. So I think a lot of it's also about listening and listening to the experience of others, and just because that's not your experience doesn't mean that their experience is less valid. And I think that's how we learn from each other and somehow get better, right? I don't know. I don't know if it's even...
You would hope that was the case.
I would love to see it. I don't expect it.
Well, do you know what? I think it's beautiful that we've been able to have this conversation, because as Part 3 postgraduate architectural students, we clearly have our bumps and bruises.
Our traumas. Trauma response.
Trauma response, straight up.
PTSD. We call it architecture SD. No, PATSD, post-architecture traumatic stress.
No, and literally, and there's things, I think through this segment of Musings Behind the Creative, with part 3 is what we call it. Yes. I think it's beautiful that we have both been...
Sorry.
We've both been put in this collective. I would like to see us have more conversations like this. And it was an absolute pleasure interviewing you and just hearing your story. And actually, you know, with us being in the School of Westminster for the School of Architecture, I would really like to see more of a initiative to get more of us together and interview students from undergrad to postgraduate and, you know, just start getting this clean, fresh space to just be honest.
Yeah, I think, you know, we all have a voice, and a lot of the time the frustrating thing is alone our voices
are not heard.
Often mean a lot.
Yeah.
Or they should mean a lot. Like, but together I think, you know, everyone's experiences make up something, and everyone has their unique take. And I've been very candid in this interview.
No, it's been absolutely refreshing. I mean, I don't ever want to take over somebody's story, but definitely we have a lot that we can relate together on.
Yeah. And I just want to say as well, like, you know, I'm sorry in general. Not that I've done anything, but I'm sorry that you've had to go through the awful treatment that you've had to go through, because it's not right.
And
it's not. And, you know, even though, you know, people glaze over what they do, like, your story is valid. Your experience is valid. Don't let anyone ever tell you.
I appreciate that. I really do.
Getting mushy here.
I genuinely do. I do have a bit of a tough exterior, and going to therapy and talking about my stuff, I've learned that it is okay.
Can you teach me about the tough exterior? I cry all the time by accident.
No.
It's an issue.
Now I cry. Before I was never a crier.
Yeah.
I would hold it in. Now, any slight thing, it's literally really emotional, because I used to suppress a lot. And hyper awareness, suppressing everything in your body, but your body giving you signs all the time, but you suppress it.
Yeah.
So now I've literally, through therapy, had to just, it's okay to cry. There's no shame in it, you know?
Yeah, it's brave.
And when you're having a panic attack or whatever, I didn't actually know what all those things were.
Yeah.
Now I can put names to them and, oh, that's what that is. Oh my God, okay, I don't know if this would happen to you, but I remember when I first started working in HKS, because I wasn't used to working in a practice, I'd be doing my job, but my anxiety would be beating the shit out of me. I was like, oh my God, I'm too slow.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking at their screen.
You know what else it is? It's all those microaggressions, all those comments people have made. I'm sorry, I don't mean to
No,
interrupt
literally,
you,
yeah.
But literally, and you're internalising them. I've done exactly the same thing. When people tell me I'm not worth it, or when people tell me that they wouldn't have hired me, it creates complex. And actually, you end up not being your best self. And it's still something I'm trying to combat. So I relate so hard to that.
No, it's a lot. But here's to creating a safe space where everyone can be seen and feel heard. And here's to maybe us all really sitting down and saying, we need to make it safe in architecture.
We're going to tolerate how it is.
And it's not safe to tolerate it how it is. And yeah.
And thank you for giving me this platform to talk nonsense at you.
It is never nonsense. It's all banter. It's all banter. Hopefully we didn't ruffle any feathers.
Fingers
and we've
crossed
kept it
still
critically and politically balanced.
I hope so anyway.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to you co-hosting with me.
What?
Yeah.
You're funny. Sure, why not? Let's put the world to rights.
We'll see what we can do. At least, if anything, I think this should be a space where it's not just about us coming together and kikiing and being like, okay, we're shitting on our experiences, or we're sharing our experience and saying, did that happen to you? Did this happen to me?
The thing is as well, right? Like, you say like shitting on experiences, but it's worth acknowledging that even the bad experiences got us to where we are. And made
No,
us the people
literally.
we are.
Yeah, no. Honest, now.
Now it's hindsight,
Oh,
right?
now you can't
Right.
tell me nothing. I'm a baddie. Humbly speaking. Humbly
so
speaking. Because it's like, the things we do, I mean, come on. I trackpadded for my whole architectural education. I started using a mouse when
Life-changing.
I got to work in practice. So can you imagine all the
I can't.
twisting?
I don't know how you did that.
I was DJing it on like, so if this is what we all can do, no, we're actually amazing, and we should actually acknowledge that.
100%. No. Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and so yeah, we look forward to seeing you on the other side. Thank you, Charlotte. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Oh, also, finally, just tell us a little bit about what the things you're working on and where we can find you, should anyone want to follow you, and yeah, all that good stuff.
Yeah, no, so I, at the moment, I'm not going to get into it, but I was made redundant. I'm on LinkedIn.
Good.
My name, Charlotte Holland.
Nice.
And yeah, I'm part of like Neurodiversity Architects Network. We've got a LinkedIn group. If anyone wants to join, just give us a shout. And yeah.
Wonderful. I've been your host, Renata Dixon-Nwosu, and this has been Charlotte Holland, and we have been at the School of Architecture at Westminster, and we will see you when our next episode airs, which would be on Thursdays, and then we would have the bi-weekly musings that I will still add to the roster, but we're going to have more voices and more stories heard on